Welcome to the Digital Marketing Mentor. I'm your host, Danny Gavin, and together with industry leaders and marketing experts, we'll explore the meeting point of mentorship and marketing. We'll discover how these connections have affected careers, marketing strategies, and lives. Now get ready to get human. Hello, I'm Danny Gavin, founder of Digital Marketing Professor and the host of the Digital Marketing Mentor. Today, we welcome Jack Hepp. He is the owner of Industrious Marketing, a company dedicated to providing Google Ads management for local businesses. Jack is a seasoned digital marketing consultant with over a decade of experience across paid search, display advertising, and social media strategy. Jack has a proven track record of helping businesses of all sizes optimize their online presence and achieve measurable results. Today, we're going to be talking about mentorship, what Jack learned from his first agency job, all things Google Ads, particularly when working with local businesses. And finally, the main reason why we're here today is pricing models and strategies for paid advertising, a topic that caught my eye on LinkedIn recently. Jack, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing really well. We were talking about earlier that we kind of met at Brighton SEO. But really what, I've been watching you on LinkedIn, being, very active and providing really great content. And it just made sense, reached out to you. And I'm so glad that you're here today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I really appreciate you having me on and excited to chat with you. So,
all right. So where did you go to school and what did you study?
So I went to Montana State University in Billings, Montana, which is where I live now. I studied business administration. Then they had options where you could focus in marketing and management. So I originally actually was going into management, but I had my first marketing class and really liked it. And so I added that on and here we are 10 plus years later. So
that's awesome. And you also, I think you worked for your family's construction business as well.
Yeah. So my dad had a construction company and he started it when I was a young kid. And so worked in that. I mean, there's pictures of me at 3-4 years old outside with a hammer with my dad and worked all through college doing that and learned a lot of things that apply to marketing, even though it seems kind of odd. So
no, it's cool. I think everyone, not everyone is blessed to have a family business, and it doesn't mean you have to stay there, but at least having that opportunity to be in that environment and to learn. I've had that with my family as well. So I think you're lucky to have that experience in your life.
I work with a lot of small businesses and always have, and my dad had a small business, so I have an affection for small businesses, just, growing up in that, I understand the challenges and what that's like. And so it definitely had a big impact.
So when looking back at college in particular, are there any moments there, whether it's inside or outside the classroom, that paved your path today?
The first thing that comes to mind would be my very first marketing class. I think it was just marketing 101 or something like that. But really, marketing wasn't even necessarily on my radar up to that point. Like I said, I went to school for management. I don't know that I had a path in my mind that was just kind of where I thought I was going to start. And I took that marketing class and immediately after that added, that to my degree and took a bunch more marketing classes. And so that was a big piece of it. And I had a wonderful marketing professor. I think I first had her class my second year that definitely kind of helped push that as well. And so those were probably the biggest things that kind of pushed me towards the path I'm on today.
Love it. And, it's interesting. I speak on a panel every year to, I think about 100 or 200 business students and in the undergrad at University of Houston. And there's a panel of people just so that they can get a better idea of what everything is. And it's really interesting because a lot of undergrad business students, when you talk about marketing, they just think it's sales. They don't realize it's like this whole other world. And so that theme is really common. And thank God, you figured out, okay, wow, there is this thing marketing. Me never thought about it. And yeah, even if maybe you didn't get into it right away, but it planted those seeds to get there eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it wasn't even something that was necessarily on my radar. And I took that class and then it was, at that point in time, social media and digital marketing was really still kind of early. It'd been around for a while, but it was still early on. So my job barely even had started existing at that point, and there I was in college getting directed on the path to it.
So Jack, how would you define a mentor?
Someone who's willing to, provide you advice, guidance, but even just be, open to, giving you an ear to listen, reinforcing things where you need it, but maybe giving you some feedback in other areas as well. And kind of somebody that'll help direct you on a path or help you find the way that you should go.
So let's talk about Amy Bishop. You shared that she was instrumental in your endeavor to start a business. Can you elaborate on your relationship with Amy and how she inspired you to go out on your own?
I had worked for a couple different agencies here in Billings, Montana. They were more full service agencies, and I'd been the only digital person at those agencies. So I was totally self taught. I kind of built up the digital side myself, and had figured it out along the way. And so I first met Amy through Twitter. I think it was in maybe 2020, 2021. And I had posted about going out on my own, and she reached out and just gave me this huge list of things that she learned when she went out on her own, and how, like just tips and guidance and things to think about. And, a lot of stuff that I never would even have considered. And then the way that fate works out, I guess, about 6 months after that, she reached back out and said that she was hiring and needed somebody to join her team, and asked if I was interested. And I was in a place where I was ready to leave the position I was at and joined Amy, and spent about a year working with her, and learned a lot from her. I finally had somebody else that was doing Google ads that I could learn from, and somebody that was extremely knowledgeable, and had a lot of experience. And so I was able to learn a lot from her for a year and stuff. And then ultimately she had some other opportunities that she was going to pursue, and was kind of ready to slow down her agency a little bit. And at that point in time, she, reached out and asked if I'd be interested in taking on some of the clients that I manage and going out on my own. And, always had been a goal of mine to end up out on my own. And Amy, very graciously provided me my first clients, and gave me, some guidance and helped me launch out on my own. And I definitely wouldn't be sitting where I'm at today if it wasn't for her. So
How special. I mean, wow. Most people don't get that opportunity.
yeah.
Do you still speak with her?
I haven't been in touch with her for a while. I keep thinking I need to reach back out and just, say hi. And I always feel immensely grateful for what she did. Because like you said, very few people get an opportunity like that. And I will always be forever grateful that, that she, passed those clients on to me and gave me that opportunity. So
Cool. Well, hopefully she's going to watch this episode and she'll be like, okay, let's definitely chat. Well, you also mentioned a professor. I assume it was Brenda Dockery. How did she help you prepare for professional life after college?
I can't quite remember what the marketing class was, but she had a huge background in sales, and then had done some marketing, and became a professor at my college. And the first class I took with her, we had to cold call businesses in order to try to get donations for the school, actually. Like, so, and that was the first time I'd ever had to cold call like that. And it was terrifying. But it was, it was a great experience. And she brought so much just real world experience to her classes that a lot of other professors just didn't necessarily have. Even if they had a background in it, it was very rigid school and stuff. And hers was always just very real life. That helped prepare me a lot for, I think, the real world after school. And then on top of that, she remained kind of a mentor of mine for several years afterwards, and was just always there to, give me advice, hear me out, and even push back. I within a year after school, I think I went to her and told her that I wanted to go out on my own, and have my own marketing business. And she very wisely talked me into pursuing a different direction. And I think that, I think it saved me probably a lot of heartache at that time.
Yeah. And you're a real life example of two things that I push all the time, specifically for people who go to college. So number one, taking those classes that are really practical, because theoretical is good, but man, if you can get some practical experience within the classroom, why not? So that is so cool. And number two, all you need is that one or two professors that you have that connection with, because having them outside of the classroom, even when you graduate, it can make a world of a difference. And I'm not saying that's the only reason that you're successful today, Jack, but it's cool to see that two things which I personally feel are really important. Those were also, big things in your life.
I fully think that those are two pieces that helped me find success after school. I had other professors that pushed real life experience, even other ones that I stayed in touch with for a few years after school. And when you first get out of school, it feels like the Wild West, and you have no idea what you're doing or where you're going. And it's nice to have some people that are willing to kind of step in and help give you some guidance.
So you also shared a few names of recent mentors of yours who have also been guests on our podcast, like Jill, Sarah Steeman, Aquila DeFazio. They're all amazing people. What kind of advice and feedback from them has been most helpful to you in recent years?
Lending an ear to listen, I think. Having somebody that you can, vent frustrations to, or share challenges, and they're, willing to hear you out and give you, like, what they went through and some of those kind of things. But they've all shared, different experiences that they've had, whether starting businesses or in their careers generating content or just Google Ads issues and things like that. They've always had a lot of advice and stuff that I feel like I can always turn to any of them with a question, and they have great feedback.
So some say being a solopreneur or a freelancer can be, pretty lonely, but I think you've set it up the right way, right? You're connecting yourself with other freelancers. And one of the beautiful things about our community is there's a lot of people who are willing to just talk and give advice and be there. So just, people who are listening, remember that, if you decide to go down the freelance path, it's important to create that structure, whether it's the mentors on top or the people on the side of you who are also mentors, but just in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was something I didn't necessarily figure out immediately. I will say, Amy giving me the step up immediately was extremely helpful, but I also skipped a lot of steps that I think a lot of, people that go out on their own have to work through. And I think I kind of was able to, I might have skipped them at first, but then I had to come back and kind of work through some of those things. And that was, building a community around me, which has really been, I've been on my own for almost 3 years now. And I really just in the last year and a half have built that community around myself. And so I was missing that early on, finding those people that you can connect with and share. When you have an issue on Google Ads and there's nobody else to talk to, it's very lonely. But if you have other people you can go commiserate with, it feels a lot better. So
Totally. So like the circle of life, you shared that you often mentor people now who connect with you on LinkedIn, you being the influencer or the subject matter expert that's out there. So for those who do reach out to you with questions online, how do you nurture those mentor relationships on LinkedIn?
I mean, I'm always happy to talk to people that reach out to me, and I'd be happy to be, I guess, more formal mentoring than I have done up to this point. But my first thing is just always listening first. A lot of times when people reach out, they don't want you to spew your life story to them. They want you to hear out what their challenges are. And so that's kind of my first thing is just, listening to people, hearing them out. And then from there, it might be providing them with some encouragement, or some, ideas, steps, things that they can pursue to chase after, whatever their goals are. Sometimes people just don't know where the next step is. And it's nice to have somebody that's been there and done that and say like, hey, here's the next step I took, and you can do that same kind of thing. And then I think the last thing is being willing to give them constructive criticism. Like I said, I've had mentors in my past that stepped in and were like, maybe you should rethink that, or maybe here's an alternative you should consider. And that can be really powerful. You don't know what you don't know a lot of times when you're working through your career, and somebody else that can step in and push back a little bit and say, hey, like, here, reconsider some of these things, or think about some of this other stuff that might be out there, can be really powerful, even if it's not always the most fun thing to hear.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to give that constructive criticism. What's your approach? Do you find it easy, hard? Is it something you've had to work on?
It's definitely something I find hard. And honestly, there's probably times where I could have been better with it than I am. And so I'm always trying to improve. And, there's people talk about like the compliment sandwich kind of thing, like, here's a good thing, here's a bad thing, here's a good thing. My approach is very much like, I don't want to tell people that, this is a terrible idea, don't do it. That's not my goal. My goal is to say like, here's some alternatives that you might want to consider, and why, like, some challenges that you could run into, like why these things could be issues. Here's challenges I ran into in my career that you might experience if you go on this route, and some of those kind of things. So because people find success through all sorts of different avenues. And so just because I didn't experience it that way doesn't mean it's wrong, but it is good to go into something with full knowledge and say like, this could be bad, but maybe you'll find a way to work through it too.
So as we shift the conversation towards your marketing expertise, I thought it might be interesting to talk about the time that you spent in the agency world. I'm sure this was hard, but could you share with us the story of how you got fired from your first agency job?
I got my first agency job. I'd been out of college about a year, I think. And that had been my goal since the time I left, was to get into an agency. And so I finally had an opportunity. And when I first joined, I was more of a project manager, would probably be a good description of what my job was. And I very much was trying to just learn and figure out as many things as I want. And so about a year into it, the agency started wanting to offer digital marketing, and they'd had some outside vendors that they'd used at the time. Basically, it was, hey, you're 23, you know what social media is, like, come do all our digital marketing. And I'd played around with it a little bit on my own and had some interest in it and had learned about it, but I was very little experience and honestly probably took on more than I should have at the time just because I was willing. I wanted to say yes and I wanted to do whatever I could. And so I was the digital marketing person for about 6 months and started running into some challenges specifically with one of the vendors wasn't wasn't handling campaigns in the way that they should have. But I didn't do a good job of communicating and controlling some of that kind of stuff and sharing the challenges back with clients and with the internal team members and things like that. And so ultimately ads weren't getting run and money wasn't getting spent. And the client came back and was upset and blamed us for lost revenue and things of that nature. And I was kind of the person in the middle of it all, and they decided at that time to let me go. About a year and a half into my professional career, and I had been fired. And it was funny at the time. None of my friends actually believed that could have been true. They thought I was joking with them, and there was no way that Jack was fired from a job. So it was not fun, and I thought I would never be in digital marketing ever again. But I found another job through a connection about 3 months later and spent 4.5 years at that agency doing digital marketing. At the time, I was angry and blamed a lot of people. But looking back on it now, I mean, I learned a lot from the experience, and there was probably things that could have been handled differently on either side of that. One of the biggest takeaways I got from it was just how valuable communication is in marketing. And it's something that we should understand as marketers because it's really a big piece of our job. But I was trying to fix things myself and not communicating well and not dealing with the issues that are there. And if I'd been better at communicating and handling some of those things, I think I probably would have ran into less issues at that point in time.
So I often have students who come up to me and say, Danny, I've got like 2 job opportunities in front of me. One where I'm going to come in and they want me to do everything, but I'm not going to really have that much, like there's no one going to be overseeing me. I'm not going to really have someone that I can ask questions to. Or I have another position where it's more of like I've got that mentor or that person who has the experience, and I'm going to be able to learn from them and I can ask questions. Now, naturally, you have people who like different situations better, like they want to do it all themselves or they need more help. Looking back at that first situation that you had, I mean, there's pros and cons of the environment you were in, but do you have advice that you would give to someone on what's a better place to start off at?
I think early in your career, you need to ask for help when you need it. And I've always been somebody that just wants to take it and do it myself, and to a fault, not asking for help. And I think that was really, ultimately where I ran into problems was I wasn't reaching out for help and I wasn't finding ways to, avoid these situations. I just thought I could, work harder and faster and do it myself. And none of that was ultimately going to fix it. Because like I said, I had very little experience at the time. I didn't know what I didn't know, to be honest. And I think I could have avoided a lot of heartache if I'd just been better at asking for help, or even being willing to say like, hey, honestly, I don't know how to do this, and we may need to find somebody else that can help us figure this out because I just don't have that experience.
So pivoting to local, you specialize in managing Google Ads for local businesses. What are some common misconceptions that local owners have about using Google Ads?
The biggest one is always around budget. It's a challenging conversation for small businesses because it's hard to spend money and hope you get a result and not know what it is. A lot of times what I find is small businesses, they want to, well, I'll spend this little amount of money, and if it works, then we can spend more. So I think that's the biggest thing is you have to say like, this is what we're actually willing to spend. Here's our set timeline. Let's actually give it a real try. We can't just like dip our toes in the water and hope it works. We need to actually put some real budget into this and see what's going to happen.
So when we're talking about local business owners, what is a reasonable budget that you recommend? And what about duration? So like, is there a certain amount of time that you feel like, hey, you need to try this for at least this amount of time or else it's not going to be worth it?
3 months is kind of my default. And I think probably a lot of people will say 3 months. Some of it's just an experience thing. That third month sometimes just seems to be where things finally take off.
Yeah. So for those who have tried Google Ads before, but didn't see the results they expected, especially when we're talking about local businesses and maybe smaller budgets, what are some common issues that can go wrong?
Especially for local businesses and small budgets, the biggest challenges are the limited data that you have a lot of times to use things like smart bidding and AI and whatever you want to say. But the bigger problem a lot of times is what their actual offer is and what they're trying to get people to do. They tend to just like, hey, we're going to send them to the website. It's got a phone number and a form and people will fill it out. And, rarely do people actually work that way. And so a lot of times what I find is they didn't have a good offer. They didn't have a good landing page. They didn't have a really good foundation to build their campaign on that would actually give people a reason to take the actions that they wanted to do. Really started to lead with that a lot of times now. I'm like, we need to have a good offer. We got to have a good landing page. We need to know what our goals are and what we're trying to do. And if we don't have all those things figured out and aligned, there's no point in us even starting this campaign until we know what that is.
Yeah, I think it like connects to the fact that in order to advertise, you have to have a product or a business. Yeah. And if it's not set up correctly, whatever you're going to do, it's not going to help. So do you mind sharing with our audience what are local service ads and how can a local company use those?
Local service ads they're targeted towards service-based businesses. So think of, HVAC or plumbing, barbers, all those sorts. There's a whole list of lawyers is a big one. All those sorts of kind of local businesses that tend to offer a service within a set area. They don't necessarily, they're not a national company or something like that. And so local service ads are probably the most unique Google Ads type that there is. In fact, they have their own platform that's connected to a Google Ads account, but not like you don't actually run them inside of your typical Google Ads account. So basically, they're connected to your Google business profile and you set a budget and Google will serve your ads typically at the top of the page with there's like usually an image, business name, the ability to message or call. And then you only pay for leads that actually come through. So you don't pay for clicks on the ad, like traditional ads. And then outside of that, there's not a ton of optimizations to be done like you would find in a normal campaign. You got to have a good Google profile and there's some various things you can do, but they're definitely a unique type of ad.
So the local service ad format, is that something that you recommend to your clients? Also, you want to talk a little bit about, I recently saw on LinkedIn, some people feel like all I need to do is local service ads. I don't even have to touch the regular Google ads. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I recommend local service ads to businesses that qualify for them. They take a little longer to set up than a normal account. So there's a little bit of you got to do like a background check and upload like insurance information and different things. It kind of varies by the industry, but they can be a really valuable ad type because they are almost always at the very top of the search results. And they're, like I said, it's somebody's clicking on it and they're calling you and you have this person on the phone. You're not hoping they go to the website and then take the action. There's definitely a lot of value in local service ads. And I recommend them to almost any business that operates in that area. Most of the businesses that I help with locals, because there's not a lot to do with a local service ad. If somebody's charging you like a large monthly fee to run local service ads, start asking questions because there's not a lot that they're probably doing. So
spoiler alert.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So for most of my clients that I help them on local service ads, we're running a traditional Google account and campaigns along with it. And so I do think that there's a lot of value to both. And honestly, Anthony Higman had a great post on this on LinkedIn the other day. And so I'm probably going to steal some of that because he put it so succinctly. I have to use it. Local service ads don't serve on every single search. Like they're not always guaranteed to serve when somebody is searching for, whatever your services may be. So if they're not serving, those are potential customers that you could completely miss without a traditional campaign that might be serving on those additional searches. And then additionally, people aren't necessarily going to always click on a local service ad. A lot of people know that's an ad and they quickly scroll past it. They might be looking at a map format and see a different ad in the maps, especially for local businesses. So there's a lot of value in having those alternate ad types out there as well. And then the last thing with local service ads is Google's in control of everything with them, right? So there's not necessarily a way for me to make sure my ad's always number one. Google is typically kind of rotating through these. And Anthony put it the best way on LinkedIn is Google has to get all of these businesses running local service ads leads or they're going to leave. Like the only way that people are going to continue running these ads and spending money is if they're all getting some sort of leads. So Google's going to be rotating people through, rotating who's at top, who's getting leads. And I'm sure that they have rankings and different things that they take into account with those. But ultimately, there's very little control over where and how often your ad shows. And so if you want to have that control and make sure your ads are available, you need traditional campaigns running alongside those.
Yeah, I think you presented it perfectly. Thank you. So segueing to paid media pricing models and strategies. So you've recently shared about the importance of understanding pricing models for paid advertising. Can you walk us through some common pricing models in digital advertising?
Probably the most well-known and common one is percent of ad spend, where an agency will take, basically some sort of percentage of however much ad spend that they're using. There's kind of a hybrid off of that, which is actually the model I use. You have ad spend tiers based on the budget. If you're spending within this range, this is my set management fee. If you bump up into the next range, my fee goes up. I think that there's more control and more understanding for the business and for me. Like, I know as long as your spend's in this range, here's how much I'm making. I'm not having to try to calculate things every time. And then I see people run hourly, where they just charge a set hourly fee and they track their time. I see people run just a set, fee per month that doesn't take into account ad spend. And then there are performance-based models out there too, based on, like maybe a percent of revenue or, based on, leads and some of those sorts of things as well. Those are more complex and honestly, I think risky for everybody. But those exist as well.
Yeah, I feel like whenever a potential client comes to me with an idea of performance, it's kind of like, well, I still need to pay my people. It's like, what? That's always a hard one.
Yeah, I understand it from a business standpoint. Like, I'm going to pay you when you get me results. But also, like, I delivered a service. Maybe it may have worked, it may not have worked. There's a lot of things in the online world that are out of my control, like your website, how well your salespeople close, and so those kind of things. And so, those are difficult. And then there's a lot of ability to manipulate things in the digital ad world. Like, I could just run up brand spend and make your performance look great, but you're not going to be happy when you run out of customers.
So how do you think businesses should evaluate whether a pricing model is fair and aligned with the value that they're receiving?
With local businesses, I do a lot more in lead gen and some of those sorts of things. So I can't work off a performance model very well. And most of those businesses wouldn't be able to find somebody that would work on a performance model for them. That can play a big piece in it. E-commerce tends to have a little bit more of that ability there. People have to step back and look at, like, okay, these people are running a business and they need to get paid for the service that they provide. And I want some sort of assurance that I'm going to get some results out of my ad spend. And so I think, that makes people lean towards the performance model. But I think if you find that a business aligns with your goals and they have like the referrals and stuff like that, and they're willing to work on, like a tiered system or something like that, and that ad spend fits within your goals and what you need as a business, I think that is a good place to look at. You have to look at your margins and things like that as well. Like, what's the cost going to be on these, and how does that fit into whether or not we're going to make money, and how much we have to sell to make money, and some of those kind of things. So.
Yeah, I'll just add two other points. I think number one, with the agency itself, working with an agency that's very transparent, right? Like you said, like if you have an agency that's just going to throw brand in together with things and not actually be clear, or, they're looking at the lead, but they're not really looking at what turned into a sale. Like, there's different levels. So I think if you work with a partner who's like, we're going to be transparent, right? And we want to see exactly what's happening as much as you do. I think that also helps understand, right, that relationship. I think that's a big one. Naturally, you have to take that fee into account with the potential revenue. And you have to see, like, if the numbers all make sense, right? Like, if when you add the fee on, you're still making money, you're still doing, then obviously that makes sense. If not, then naturally it may not work. And either you can negotiate another fee, or maybe it might not be the right provider for you.
Right. And I think I'll add on to the transparency one's a big one. One of the biggest criticisms of, like, the percent of ad spend or something like that is, well, the agency is just, they're incentivized to just spend more and more and more regardless. If you have an agency doing that, again, you should start asking questions, because they shouldn't be just running your ad spend up for no reason whatsoever. And with my clients, we have a set budget. In fact, I have a clause in my pricing where I say, like, if our budget is in this tier and I accidentally run our ad spend up into the next tier, I'm not going to charge you that level of pricing, because that wasn't the approved budget. that's on me. And so you need to find a partner that's going to be transparent, and then that model is a lot less scary because people aren't going to run up ad spend for no reason.
Exactly. And then when they do come to you, they'll have a reason like, hey, we see this and that. I really think we need to go into the next tier. And, if it logically makes sense and you have a trustworthy partner, you can see that, yes, they will benefit from that increase, but that's just the benefit, like the added option. It's not the reason that they're pushing it. So you mentioned in a post, and I think that was the post that sparked everything about this, about bringing you on, that, what's included in a management fee, right? It can vary wildly. So what should businesses look at when they're assessing what's included, what's not included? And I think the big thing that I wanted to bring up was, yes, there's managing Google Ads, but then there's also building landing pages or, monitoring or managing a CRM, and some people feel like that's taken for granted. Obviously, they're going to do this or they're not. So I'd love your opinion on the matter. And, what do you think about this?
Again, it's a transparency thing. Somebody might be way more expensive for me, but maybe they include way more services than I do. Traditionally, I think that in a Google Ads management, you should expect somebody to fully manage the campaign, and I include tracking in that. I think that getting tracking set up and managed is a big piece of what you need to do as a Google Ads manager to find success and prove success. And so I think that that's a big piece of it. Beyond that, currently I don't think that Google Ads management a lot of times includes things like landing pages or CRM management or something like that, unless those are kind of explicitly stated things. However, I think that the future could be very different for that as Google Ads and how we manage things change. Those may become much more important in a manager. But it should be everything from campaign setup, strategy, day-to-day optimizations, meetings and reports. I think everybody should have some sort of reporting included. That shouldn't be an add-on extra cost. And I'm also a big proponent of businesses owning their own accounts and handling ad spend outside of kind of that relationship as well.
So naturally, it would be safe to say that whether it's a freelancer or an agency providing landing pages or other sort of services outside of what we discussed, if they're going to charge extra for that, that's not out of the world, right? It's not crazy.
Yeah, I think that those are totally fair things that you can add on, either as an add-on or they could be part of your base fee if that's what you're doing. They're all really related, and there's been more than one time where I wish that I was doing more landing page stuff because the landing pages I have to work with are rough at best, and that can be a big piece of how successful your campaigns are. So
yeah, and I think going back to the provider, naturally, if you're working with an agency, they might have the skills or more than one person who can help with each one of those areas. When you're dealing with a freelancer, they may not themselves have the skills for all of that, but what they are doing is really, really good. And therefore, it just depends. Mm-hmm. But that's why I think the point we're getting here is it's really about transparency. It's kind of understand what you're getting. And then sometimes it's even good to say what you're not getting, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're not getting that, doesn't mean it's bad. It's just, a realistic sort of situation. And if it's something you want and your freelancer doesn't provide it, that doesn't mean that he or she can't help you find that as well, right? It may not be with them, but it could be with another person. So it's really about communication. And I think what's nice about our general circle is it feels like whether it's the freelancers or the agencies, we try to be as honest and transparent as possible. And that way, people feel good working with people like us.
Because one of the biggest things I run into with local businesses is they don't understand the difference between SEO and PPC at all. Yep. And that's a conversation that I have to have very early on, or we're going to have wildly different expectations of what's going to happen with this campaign.
And it's crazy because you think by now people would know the difference, but they don't, right? And they might come to you say, "Hey, Jack, can you help me with some SEO work?" And so right away, you have to be you don't email them back saying, "Hey, I don't provide it." It's more hey, let's have a chat. Do you even know what you want?
Right. Yes. That is because they think SEO is PPC or, vice versa or whatever it is. And so it's let's talk about this and get down to what are you hoping to have? Okay, here's what that actually is. So
it's a different world on the local smaller business side, but it's very rewarding, because you can actually see the difference that you're making to these people's lives or to their businesses or families. It's cool. So you're in a good place, Jack.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, the client I started working with last fall, they actually just hired 2 employees to help with their growth.
Huge.
So it's cool to see that, our ads have helped them grow, and now they're bringing on people, and it's really that makes it a lot more fun, even though there's some additional challenges that come with local. So
yeah, they say you're doing a good job in two ways. One is that they make you turn off the campaigns, but it's rather the second one, which you just said, right? Like they actually go and hire more people, and you can see that they're growing. You'd rather have number two, but it's nice to say that I'm doing so well that they can't even handle it.
Yeah. Doing so well you get yourself fired is not as fun as doing so well that they have to hire and grow. So
well, let's just say pause. Hey, can you just pause it for a month or two?
Yes.
But absolutely. What they don't realize is when you pause campaigns, that could also cause problems. So
yeah, that's a conversation I have as well. So
outside of any other case study that you're proud of, like, oh man, if it's a certain industry, would love to hear about it.
So I'll do like coaching and consulting work with small businesses as well, especially the smaller the business. Like that's if they don't have a lot of times if you're spending under $5,000 or under $10,000, it may not make sense to hire somebody to run ads for you. And so you may be trying to do them yourself. And so I do some coaching and consulting, and I worked with a local brand. She's like a local kitchen store and sells all kinds of stuff. And she was running PMAX, and honestly, her PMAX campaign was running incredibly well for her. And that was all she had going and stuff, but she was having a ton of luck with it. But I was able to kind of come in and help her a little bit with some tips and some things to try and ways that we could, segment things out and stuff like that. And I'm going to look really quick to see if I can find, she wrote me a review and had the exact number that actually the impact had. And yeah, so we helped her sales grow by 60% compared to the last year. And like I said, she was doing really good on her own. There was just some things that, through experience and knowledge and stuff, I was able to help her kind of improve and build on and stuff. And so, that's kind of another fun one. And again, just a small local store that needed a little bit of help. So
it's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right. It's time for our top three. I will mention a category, and then you can tell me what you like about it or an anecdote or what you think of. All right. Sure. Number one, gardening. Any specific, do you like doing vegetables or flowers or?
I like both. I love planting flowers because they're just pretty. And in fact, I bought too many this year, and my wife and I had to get another planter box to put more flowers in. So, but I really enjoy growing vegetables and things as well. Even some little fruits. I like to grow stuff that you can't necessarily always get in stores. So I have purple green beans, every color of pepper and tomato that you could ever imagine, little cute white pumpkins. I got cucumbers that they're called salt and pepper cucumbers. They're these little yellow ones with black specks all over them. So I just unique things that you don't necessarily find in the store that are kind of fun to play with.
Very cool. You'll have to send me photos.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a ton. So
cool. Fishing.
I've been fishing since I was a kid. And, growing up in Wyoming and living in Montana, obviously outdoors is a huge part of everything. And so love fishing. It's something I probably don't do enough, but my dad's always been my best fishing buddy. And so we try to get out and go fishing as much as we can.
And finally, reffing high school and college soccer.
Yeah. So I grew up playing soccer through high school. But actually, when I was younger, my wife and I were just getting started. I first started to join it, trying to make a little extra money on the side and have something fun to do. But I really enjoy being around the game and getting to, ref high school kids, ref college kids. It's a lot of fun. And there's even some mentorship that sneaks in there
totally.
Now and then as well. So that's takes up a lot of my fall, but it's a ton of fun.
So Jack, where can listeners learn more about you and your business?
Probably the best place to learn more about me is on LinkedIn. It's where I'm the most active. You find me on Twitter once in a while, not as much. And I don't know, I think I have an Instagram and a Threads and stuff too. I just not on those as often. And then so my website is industriousmarketing.co. Don't add the M on the end. That's somebody else. And so you can find more about my business and got information on my services and ways to get in contact with me and some of those kinds of things. So
cool. So before we wrap, what's next for you, Jack? What's the next big thing?
More services for small businesses that can't necessarily hire somebody like me. I talk to them all the time and I want to help them more, but we have to make economics work for all of us, right? So I'm hoping this year to have some additional services or courses or coaching kind of things that will help small businesses, use and run with Google Ads. And I think that some of where Google Ads is evolving may play into that as well, and it could ultimately be beneficial for everybody. So,
well, once that comes out, let us know so that we can share with everyone. All right. Well, Jack, thank you so much for being a guest on the Digital Marketing Mentor. This was really awesome. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into the Digital Marketing Mentor. We'll speak with you next time.
thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Marketing Mentor podcast. Be sure to check us out online at thedmmentor.com and at the DM Mentor on Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more marketing mentor magic. See you next time.